Hi guys, Travis here, Perth Diesel Performance. Another DIY installation video. Today we've got the 200 series dual battery kit, the deluxe dual battery kit. So I'm going to run you through on the vehicle what goes where and the basic overview and what's going to be in this video. So let's check it out. So engine bay on a late model Landcruiser only comes with one battery. So the second battery, the auxiliary battery, is going to be mounted down here on all our tray assembly. These trims here will be coming off. We're going to mount a Red Arc BCDC 1225D charger down here. We're going to have a SBI mounted down here on one of our brackets as well, with a battery override switch that's going to mount inside the cab. In the event that you get a flat battery, you're able to press a button and then start the vehicle. It'll pair the batteries together and it's a momentary switch. Once the vehicle's started, it'll release and you'll go back to charging the battery independently, and happy days. So let's get into the video, check out what's in it. Okay, so we've got the box open. Let's get into it. See what we've got in here. We've got the instructions here. We've got the SBI link instructions, and we got the battery tray and the BCDC mounting instructions. Got all our cabling here as well. Some more packaging. The BCDC unit. The BCDC bracket as well. So if you've got heaps of packaging in there, just to make sure everything doesn't bang around in the box. SBI bracket there as well. Top battery clamp. So we can get rid of the box now. So we'll lay all this out and we'll run you through it. Okay, so I've gone through the instructions, the contents list. I've checked off all the parts that have arrived. They're all here, so we can jump into the job and get on with it. Just now we'll get the tools ready to do the job. So now we've got the instructions. First step is to disconnect both batteries if that's applicable to your application. This car's only got one battery, so we're going to disconnect the earth. So I've got the 10mm spanner here. We're going to undo the earth. We're going to lift up the lug and we're going to insulate it, put a rag under it. Then we know if anything arcs out, we're not going to get any nasty surprises, and we'll connect it last when we're done. And just like that, the car's completely isolated. So moving on to the next step, we're going to take off the trim along here. So pretty much to get these trims off, I'd encourage you to start at one end. Literally you just push down, you'll hear it click, lift it up, get the trim, put it somewhere safe, move to the next clip and go along down the car. The reason I say start at one end and go to the other is if you click them all, you lift the panel up, what happens is they all fall down here and you've just done yourself a little mischief. So literally got all the clips there. This trim now, you can just easily pick it up and we'll store that somewhere safe. So now we're going to prepare to mount the BCDC bracket on the front radiator apron. So if you look down here, you'll see a plastic trim, little Christmas tree. We need to remove that from the vehicle. Tool of choice obviously is a trim removal tool. They're not an expensive tool. As you can see, this one's been used a few years. Probably $15, something like that. Repco, any tool shop, handy little tool. So I'll show you how it works. So this is the little clip we're taking out. So like I say, you just got to get the trim tool behind it, pop it out. It's a one-use trim most of the time. Now we're going to put a longer bolt in there to mount our bracket to. Okay, so we've located the M6, the longer bolt in the kit. We've got the M6 flange nut and the washer. We're now going to poke it in from the engine bay side, and we're going to poke it out the front, and it's going to become the mounting stud for our bracket. Look, the factory battery is still in the vehicle. I'll manage to get it in with it still in the car. However, if you need more room, take it out. It's just undoing the top brackets. You've already undone the earth, disconnect the positive, and you may need someone to lift it out with you if it is a bit heavy. So I've managed to get the long bolt through the front radiator apron, the plastic trim. I've put the washer on first, then the flange nut. So what we're going to do now is get in there and do that up so it creates a stud. Okay, so we've got the BCDC and we've got the BCDC bracket. The orientation of how it's going to mount, if you hold this in your hand like that, this is going to lay straight over the top, and you're going to see the four mounting positions here, here, here and here. It's going to line up. One thing you can make life a little bit easier for yourself is this one here is a hole and it will sort of mount the unit in place. Then go the opposing side. And you'll notice as well when I've fitted them, I've already done the nut and bolt up, so it just slides on. And I'm just doing it now. I can roll that one over, put the last one on. Now I can get 10 mils, two 10 mils, and secure the BCDC bracket in place, and then we'll move on to the fuse holder. So going back to the first bolt that went through the bracket here, we're actually going to undo it and then remount the earth for the BCDC on here, and then we'll leave that just loose so the cable's got a little bit of movement. We're going to mount the fuse holders, then we'll get everything where it's nice and relaxed, and then we'll move on to some configuration cables. Okay, so we've mounted the twin fuse holder on here. I just want to make a note as well, some kits will come with a twin covered twin MIDI fuse holder. It's an all-in-one unit. That does mount on the bracket as well, but also does these red top ones. Generally you'll see these in there, but due to supply sometimes it may be with these. Now when we're going to put the cables on here, you'll note that they've got an A, an M, and the other cable is an S. The S is the solar, A is the auxiliary battery, so that's the output from the BCDC charger, and M is the main battery. So when this BCDC is mounted up on the vehicle this way, the passenger side is the main battery, the auxiliary is on the left hand side, the driver's side. So I'm going to put them this way around here so they match the sides of the batteries. So they're just going to sit there like that. And what we're going to do is just make sure the cables are all nicely how they're going to loop around on the vehicle. Okay, so we've laid out the battery cables of the BCDC charger. Now we're going to get our charging cables. We've got a long and a short, so these go from the batteries to the BCDC charger. So like I say, a long cable and a short cable. The two differences on each end of these cables is the lug size. So what you want to do is a small lug goes on the fuse holder end, and the larger lug goes towards the battery. So what we want is that one there and this one here. Now the main battery is going to be the short lead, and the auxiliary battery, because it has the longest run, is going to be the longer lead. So we can put them on there, and then we can also put on our 40 amp fuses if it's a 25 amp charger. So I'm just positioning everything loose and just going to get it all in the nice relaxed position, and we'll worry about getting it so it's all tightened up last. So obviously just be careful with the fuse as well, that you're not breaking the fuse trying to force it on or anything like that. They are just thin little tabs, and that fuse holder will sit around there. Just make sure we've got no little, yep. Okay, so time to start tightening everything up. Okay, as you can see, we've got the fuse holders and all the cables on here. The M for the main is on the passenger side of the vehicle, and so is the main battery. We've got the short cable on this side, so that fuse can go on there. The auxiliary side is the driver's side of the vehicle, so when you're looking at it, it is on this side of the car, and we've got the auxiliary charging cable on that side. So now we can whack our fuses on, put our nuts on, and button it all up, and then just do a final check off of all the cable routing before we tighten everything up. Last of all, you want to make sure that this earth is still loose. We don't leave it loose. So get everything where it needs to be nicely, and then we'll do it up tight. You'll notice as well, I have actually returned these cables upside down. Generally speaking, they will mount either way. It just depends on what you're after. I haven't done them up tight, I'm just doing them up finger tight just to check everything and see how it all rests. Nice. So now we can whack on the fuse holders. They just push onto these little tabs, and when you want them off, you just lift them up. They just push over here, so can't really go wrong with them. So charge profiles and the setup that you've got in your vehicle. This particular setup, we don't need to connect the blue wire, the ignition, the low voltage. That doesn't require that. We're running a sealed lead acid battery in this car, so we don't need any other charging profiles. However, the BCDC can do lithium and other charging profiles, and obviously you're going to follow the instructions and connect or pair wires as required. So we're just going to seal these wires off. I'm just going to trim the ends off so there is no excess copper exposed. And then what we're going to do is put the heat shrink lengths. This is dual wheel heat shrink. So we'll just do that. We'll grab a heat gun and we'll just apply some heat. And you'll see the heat shrink starting to come down. It'll take a bit to start, but once it does, you'll see it happen reasonably quick. You can use a hairdryer if you don't have a heat gun when you're installing it, but obviously the heat gun works a little bit faster. And one thing to bear in mind as well, sometimes when you working with a heat shrink with the glue in it, the glue does get hot, so if you do squeeze it, it's a bit like hot wax. So we've got enough heat there. When you do the ends, I like to just see a little flat tab, really seals the ends off so you're getting no corrosion that's going to start up those cables. And then obviously this is going to tuck away. Once it's all cooled down, we're going to secure it all in the vehicle, and we're just going to get prepared to feed the cables into the vehicle now. So we've come over to the vehicle. We're going to prepare the front of the car to mount it on. One thing you can see here, I've a little bit of insulation tape. I've just joined the cables, so it just, when I put this end through and snake the cables through, it all sort of stays together. Got two hands, just makes life a little bit easier. So we'll just grab a 10mm. Crack these two apron bolts. So we're going to use them as mounting holes. And the lower bracket's going to go on there. One thing, you just have a look at the cabling in the bracket and clearance when we get it all in there. It's easy to point that out to you now before you fit it, but obviously once we've got it in there, we're going to make sure that nothing is moving around. The cables that come around the bracket and poke through this hole. Not sure if you can see down there, there's a clearance hole down there. Not sure if I can see my finger there. They're going to come through there or here, depending on other cabling on your vehicle. Ideally we're going to come through this hole here, but depends if you've got winches and other cabling, spotlight cabling, things are full, there is options. And then just watch that the cables don't rest on the fans. So now I've just come around the other side, like I was saying about looping those cables together. Just helps me snake a bit. So we're going to start all the nuts and bolts by hand first, and then now we'll go and get the other M6 nut, we'll mount it up, and then we'll worry about getting the cables in a nice location where nothing's stressed and nothing's rubbing. Okay, so we're going to do the little 10mm nut up. I am using an air ratchet, workshop tools, however at home, hand ratchets, whatever you have there. So let's just get the light, hopefully you can see a bit better. Okay, so got those charger lead cables here. Actually what we're going to do is tighten up the top so all the brackets are tight. Remember as well, the top two bolts here are the earth for the unit, for the charging side of it. So don't want to see you using an impact gun, something too tight on them. They aren't huge bolts, but just get it tight enough so it holds everything in place. So as you can see, as I pull these through a bit more, they come up a bit nicer. What I might do here is undo the insulation tape I put on earlier, and then I can get those cable lengths to where I want them to sit nicely. So I'm just trying to get everything so it looks neat and tidy, but obviously try and stay at a camera angle that you can see. But alright, so if you have a look in there, you'll see where I've sort of got everything sitting nice before I actually have, I need to cable tie these out of the way, so they will come a little bit tighter. These two cables here will come down, but we'll get some cable ties in there. Okay, so I've got the cabling, I'll put some zip ties. You'll see one here, we've got our programming cables as well. I've double backed it on itself. I've got another one up here just behind the earth stud and for the solar cable, and then I've got all cables bundled together as there's one, and we've just got all the cables through up on the top. Now we've got the solar cable up here. We're going to come under the battery bracket. It's going to run around the back, and then obviously we're going to install it into our Anderson plug later on. So that's that one there. Then we do have another one. Just drop down on me. We have him. This one here is our main battery cable, because obviously it's our shorter one. That's going to come up and it's going to end up onto here from main battery feed, so we're going to leave that one off at the moment. Then your auxiliary battery is going to start running through. There's a tie down point here, here, here and here. So as you can see, I've already looped it across, and it's going to end up on the positive on the auxiliary battery to charge it. So now we can move on to the next step. So we needed to mount the Anderson plug for our solar input. So obviously we've got the lead here, the positive side of it. The end result is this is going to sit on here. However, we do have some options as well. I'll just show you what I've got. These are other, this kit goes on here if you want 3 fuses off your main battery. We've got the traditional MIDI fuse holders with an Anderson as well. They're just different options we do have as well as extras if you're after them. So let's jump into it. We'll take this bracket off, mark it out, and we'll get it mounted up. Okay, so we've got the bracket off the car. What we're going to do is just squeeze these little tabs in here, flip that over. Now we've got the longer M4s, a washer and a little nylock nut. Obviously when you're marking this up or putting it on, make sure you've got the cables come in the back end there and the connecting sides facing the front of the car. So we've got that sitting where we want it. Obviously you can center pump that hole, you can pilot drill it if you don't have a center punch. The idea is to get that hole in the center run, get yourself a drill, safety glasses, drill a hole through, mount the other M5 nylock washer, away we go, reverse fit it back to the vehicle. So now we're back over at the car, we've got it all drilled, mounted, nylock nuts, all tight. So the cover did clip into the top hole up there. Now when we're done, it will still clip on, and there's a little hole just in here. Put another zip tie and we'll secure that to the main loom behind it, so it's still attached, it's not going anywhere. This is just going to mount up here. The reason we moved that back is to give you some room to connect and disconnect the Anderson plug, because there's only so much flat area in there so you can connect it. So what we want to do now is look at, you've got a negative and a positive. Obviously the red on this lead is the positive. We're going to slide it in from the back, and if you look in the front of the Anderson plug, you'll see a little tab that's clicked up. When you're looking at the bottom of this, there's a little tooth groove that is going to plug in that way. If you watch there, you'll see we're in the positive. Make sure we're in the right way, and you hear it positively click. Give it a nice little tug, make sure it's going to stay in there. Now the same with the earth. Just going to repeat that same step. Sometimes these leads here might, from when we crimp them, may need a little tweak. So just bear that in mind as well. But we've done our best to make sure it's pretty foolproof. There we go. Also a maintenance tip as well, when you're using the solar the first time, when you put something, or you can see here, that earth hasn't actually gone in enough. I'm not sure if you can see that in that camera view. I'm just going to give that a bit more positive lock and see how we go. Okay, so we got all the solar connections in, they're all nice and tight, everything's mounted. We put the J-hook back in here, we've started the nut, we've got everything all nice and loosely done. Now, we did talk about this. I am going to leave this off the vehicle. The reason is we've got a fair bit of electrical connections, terminations to do later. We've got the B to DC charger, we've got the SBI links. So we're going to leave it off, and we're going to do that as one of the last steps. Same thing with the earth. We're going to do all our terminations to anything that's live and positive. We're going to come back and visit that last. So we'll just do these back up. Not going to over tighten the battery as well. That's one thing we do see a lot of people do. I am lightly using an impact gun there. Obviously, once you've done the first nut, just give the battery a bit of a shake, make sure it's nice and tight in there. So that is done there. Now we're going to move on. We'll move on to the SBI, mounting the momentary switch assembly, the bracketry, and the auxiliary battery tray. So let's go over there and check it out. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to do on the driver's side of the vehicle. We've got an auxiliary battery tray, plastic tray, so it's like the OEM one. It is bigger, so it can hold your larger batteries. So if you've got lithium, stuff like that, it locates in there as well. I'll show you that in there. We've got our SBI bracket. That guy is going to mount on there. We're going to mark up some holes, get that all mounted. Now we've got to run the 2BS, the large battery cable. This is from the auxiliary battery to the SBI. We've got our earth cable here, and we've got our auxiliary jump cable. There's a long twin core. That'll run alongside into our momentary switch inside the cab. That's going to be the last step. And we've got our genuine battery clamp here as well. You might want to get some turpentine or metha or a little bit of heat. Take the sticker off there. I like it to look nice and neat. And we've got our stainless steel J-hook, and obviously some fixings to get in there. So come over to the car and we'll have a quick overview. So we're at the car. I mentioned before there's locating tabs. You can see them on the bottom. If you look in the bottom of the bodywork on the Toyota, there is locating holes. So obviously you're going to get the formed tray, and it locates in there nice. The J-hook's going to hook into there, and obviously our SBI bracket, nice little fit up. We are going to get him to sit right there, well, a little bit further in, like that, and then obviously the battery will go in and all the cables. So it will get a little bit busy in there, but we'll try and keep it as basic as we can. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to mount the Red Arc SBI. One thing you'll notice as well, we get these custom ordered for us. We take the VSR off of it because we don't want the batteries to be linked together. We're using the BCDC as a charging system. This little earth wire here is going to come across to the top, and we're just going to leave, once again, doing it so you can sort of see, we're going to leave it all loose so we can get in the car, get it all mounted and marked out. So I'm just doing these finger tight, time being. We're going to go over to the car, sit this in place, going to grab a marker, we're going to mark where we're going to mount it. So as you'll see, we've got our battery tray in there. We're checking under this, inner guard. Obviously we've already had a look under the car, we know there's nothing there, but obviously before you ever drill a hole anywhere, make sure that there's no other aftermarket accessories or factory accessories mounted in the way, depending on your vehicle model, because you may need to make a different arrangement. But obviously we know this works with all the factory equipment, so we're going to mark that there, then we're going to drill some holes. So now we're just going to center pop the holes so the drill doesn't wander around as I start. Some safety glasses. So we've got some pilot holes drilled there. Just change over to our 6.5 mil. Just double check that goes through. Yep. See, so you got the right size drill bit. Now, one thing in the workshop here in the kit, we give you M6 nuts and bolts. Now you've got to go underneath, put the nut, tighten the bolt up. It can be a little bit fiddly. It's a doable thing because in the workshop we use a nutsert gun. It's not something everyone has at home in their toolkit. So in the kits, like I just mentioned, we're giving you nuts and bolts. In this install here in the workshop, we're going to drill these holes larger, put a rib nut in there, a nutsert. We'll etch prime it, put it in there, and then we can just screw this in, and it's like a threaded nut insert in the factory bodywork like this one here. So it just makes it really easy, simple to install. So we'll get onto that now. So I've just vacuumed all the metal filings up. We're just going to etch prime these holes now, because obviously we don't let all that metal go into bodywork and accelerate any reasons for rust to start. Okay, what we've got here is zinc rich primer. So whenever we drill a hole in a car, we don't just fit it off, put a bit of silicone or elastic around it, or send it out the door. You want to put the primer, the zinc rich, which I've already mentioned. So you can get that from Bunnings, local paint shop. You don't need much, it goes a long way. Remembering you're paying a lot of money for these cars. If you can look after it, I'd encourage you to do so. So less is best, and you can always do a second coat. It dries pretty quick. You probably don't want to get it everywhere. So you're just going to put it in there a little bit. It dries pretty quick, air dry, and then we'll come back and top it up again. So another little tip I didn't show you, once we've drilled the holes as well, a little deburring tool. So it just takes the sharp edges off, the little dags. Obviously from a hole you can put it in there, whip around the hole before you put the etch primer on. Just a little tip, or you can use a little emery wheel or something like that if the hole's larger. So yeah, we're just waiting for the paint to dry, and then we'll put the nutserts in and fit it off. So we're at the car, we're on the driver's side of the vehicle. You don't need an air blow, just something long so I can point it out to you, because the camera angle to get in there is a bit tight. So in the back of the airbox, you're going to see this little guy right here. We're going to cut the end off of him, and then we can drag the cable through that. So it's just a rubber boot in the firewall. It is a double skin firewall, so you do need to be careful. And obviously we're going to lightly poke it through on this side, check it out on the inside, remove some trims so that we know we're not going to do any damage. This is where I've seen some catastrophic damage done to vehicles. People get a drill bit, drill through that grommet, razor blade, cut it. It ends in disaster. So just snip that boot small enough to pull the cable through, and try and keep it watertight as well, especially if you actually are going to use the vehicle for water crossings. Don't want water in the car. Okay, so we've snipped the grommet on the firewall. Now it's time to put the pull cable through. So we're just going to guide that through. And then we'll just gently put it there. It's not hitting any, we're not forcing it through. Then we'll go on the other side. This will come out pretty easy. And then once we've got that pull cable through, what we're going to do here is we've got the battery link cabling. We've just sat in position, got it on the studs and of the SBI solenoid. Fuse holders here, so replaceable 5 amp fuse. In the end, this is going to get zip tied up here. We'll undo this little clip here, harness will go under there. This cable is going to go under the airbox. I'm going to zip tie it up, and we're going to run it through the firewall over there. So we'll jump inside and we'll check out that pull cable. Okay, so at the interior of the vehicle, what we've got to do is we're going to end result removing this trim for the battery link switch. We're going to take this trim off under here so we can get access for the pull cable. The easiest way to do that, there's a little clip just here as well. It'll give us access to the screw. Just a little flat blade screwdriver. And then we can undo that either with a Phillips or an 8mm quarter drive socket. There's one there, one here, one there. And then there's some little tabs we've got to undo. Right, then there's some little detents on this clip. You just push in here and it'll come along. There's another one just here, and then just over here as well. You'll see the clips there, there and there. See, once you've got that down, you'll see the interior light connector, and remove that out of the vehicle. Now we've got access under here. We can find that pull cable. So we've got that set through there now. What we're going to do while we're here as well is we're going to take these fascia trims off so we can get access, and you'll see a bit more of what I'm doing behind the dash as well. Okay, so to get this trim off, they're just all clipped in. You can see it starting to come away there. There's one more M6 or 10mm socket head over this side. So you'll see here, I've just sort of put my hands around and it just sort of gently go around the trim. Just pop all the sides off. Just trying to work in there. Not sure if you can see too well. Once you've got the trim away here, you can then here and here just be gentle with it. Obviously you don't want to scratch or break anything. And then obviously you've got access to the switch panel. We can push out this guy here, and then we're going to replace that with a momentary switch. If you have got the deluxe battery kit, this is a great time to upgrade this and you get the extra switch locations. This vehicle will be getting that because we're putting a tow pro in it. So what we're doing is just swapping over the switches one by one. We're checking, pushing on them as well. There's little tabs just in here and in here. Just sort of pinch them together with your thumb and forefinger. They come out. There's a better view of it just there and there. And obviously just putting them back in the right locations. Sometimes actually that's going to come out as well. And one thing I've noticed as well, I've seen over the years, is customers might push the switches in and jam them in, and the switch actually gets stuck in. So just check, obviously, while you're putting the switch in, that they click nicely, and obviously when you're finished, turn everything on and off and make sure it all functions properly. Sometimes a screwdriver will help you, if you can't get your fingers in there. And I'm going to actually put the Red Arc Tow Pro there and the battery link down lower. The reason we're putting the battery link on the driver's side, or the driver's side of the steer, or the right hand side of the steering wheel, is the push button switch is on the left hand side. So that's why we're putting it in that location. We've just popped in the Red Arc Tow Pro there. We're just going to now put in our switch. You can see it's a momentary. Just go along the back, check all your switches are all clicked in. Nice and, they're all located positively. One last check of everything, nothing's jammed. Alright, so we'll go over to the vehicle now and we'll prepare the wiring harness for the backlight and the battery link circuit. So we've got all the wiring connectors for the switches. We're going to locate the wires we're going to connect in the park lights so the switch illuminates when the car's running. So you'll see a connector behind the dash. What we want to tee into is the green and the white wire. So this one's got a bit of green tape. Look, don't get in there with a knife. The wires are quite thin in the Toyota wiring, as you can see when I splay these out. They're like, I don't know what you say, telecommunication cables, pretty small. So just be gentle with them. We'll pull this tape off, we'll strip them back, and we'll get them soldered up. We're just following the instructions here. We're looking for the illumination wires, and we're going to get the red positive lead and go to the back of the white connector on the green wire, and then we're going to get the black earth lead for our multimeter, and we're going to put it into the back of the white wire that's next to it, and then we're going to turn on the, I can grip this guy, do it. And you should get battery voltage or thereabouts of it, 12 volts. So we know now we've got a park light feed. So what we're going to do here is we are now going to get our battery link switch and we're going to wire in to suit. So we'll just back probe these little pins I've used just so you can get in there, because it is a small connector with your multimeter. So okay, so since we have established the green wire here and the wire next to it, this is our positive feed, this is our negative feed for the park light feed. We've got our battery link switch. The blue wire is going to get spliced into the green one and the black is going to go into the white one. Now we don't recommend cutting factory wiring. These are the only two wires we need to tap into. Look, you can use wire strippers. These ones are behind the pivot points. I've got to go over it, run the risk of cutting in half. Can get little cable nippers and chew away at it. I prefer to just use a Stanley knife and just take a slither off and pick away at the insulation. Just got to be careful. Like I said, the wires are quite fine. Once you've got that, what we're going to do then, twist on the wires, bit of heat, bit of solder. Tip when you're soldering as well in a car, you'll see here I've got heaps, I've got towels or cardboard or something, put something down. Hot solder, when it lands on carpet, it burns and melts into it, so don't make that mistake. So we'll just get into splicing these in. Cables are quite fine. We only need a little bit of cable to, I'll try and hold it still for you. We need a little bit of cable just to wrap around and splice the solder onto. So we're just going to put another one. We'll stagger the joints as well. Obviously be careful you're not going to cut yourself with a knife or whatever tool you're using here as well, or sever into any other wiring. See, so I've just spliced in here and you see the cables are quite fine, so you just want to make sure that when you do splice it, you're not cutting any of the actual conductor, the copper, away. Obviously when we've done this as well, we have re-disconnected the battery out the front, so we're not going to short anything out. So now, like I said to you before, going back to the instructions, before you solder something, double check all your color combinations and everything as well. So the blue wire on the battery link harness is going to join to the green wire in the factory harness. Obviously on this vehicle we've checked that and we're happy with that color combination. And then the next one is and we'll just put a dab of solder on there and then tape it up once we've done there, and then around here as well. So we're just twitching the wire on just so it's going to stay there while I solder. Now something as well I want to say, we have seen people that solder and they use too much heat. You only need just enough heat to make the solder melt and adhere to the copper. It has got flux in it, so it will run. So we've just used a low amount of heat with a little cordless, I think it's a 40-watt soldering iron, and now I'm just going to put some tape, individually tape them, and then I'll tape the 4 wires together so they will go back as a factory setup. And then the other 2 wires up here, we will be trimming the twin core wire that we pulled into the cab after we pulled off the pull cable to suit the length we need to make it all neat and tidy under the dash. So now we've got the twin core that we fed through the firewall. What we're going to do is just make sure it's not wrapped around any other harnesses or it's not going to cause any tangles. I'm going to feed it from underneath so it's clear. I'm going to kind of make it exit where these cables exit. So when we push it back together, and what I will do, I should have taken that feed cable off, but not a drama because I'm going to trim this cable. Just make sure we don't scratch anything. So we get rid of that. We've got plenty of extra cable here. I'm just checking the lengths. I can give myself a little bit if we need to play with anything behind the dash. I'm going to say about here. Trim that off. Get a start on it. Obviously you can use cable strippers if you want to, but so we've got a red and a black in here. That's the main thing I want to show you. And what we've got left on our connector to our battery link is a red and a green. What we're going to do is join the red to red and the green to the black. Probably show you this way so you can see connector view, harness view. I'm going to join red to red and green to black. What that will do is when you activate the switch, 12 volts coming into the cab, 12 volts going back out, and it's going to join the batteries momentarily so you can start your vehicle. So let's get them joined up. Okay, so I've got the soldering on once again. I've stripped the cables. We've just twitched them together to hold it together, so we've got an extra set of hands, or because I don't have an extra set of hands, so I can just, you know, put a heat, solder, tape it up. Look, obviously one thing I want to make sure, don't twitch it together, rush the job and put tape around it. It's not what we want to see done with our kits, so make sure you spend the time, solder it, or if you've got connectors that crimp together, yes, you can use them I suppose if you want to, but I do prefer it solder joint. It is an emergency start button. So we've got strong positive connections there. Before I put this interior back together, we're going to go back out to the engine bay, finish all that off. We can clip the switch fascia in, and I'll validate this works before I spend the time to put it all, button it up, and then you go, hang on, I've done something wrong. So I'll just tape these wires up here, and then we'll go back out into the engine bay and move on with the next step. Okay, so we know this connector here is obviously battery switch. It's our, clip him in there. The big one up here is the mirror switch. Then you can just generally go along and look at the connector sizes and work out for yourself. They're all slightly different sizes. Don't force anything where it's not going to go. They'll just nicely clip in. You'll sort of see by the cable lengths where they go, and looking back from when I put the switch locations back in from where they originally came out of where they were in the original trim, the wiring harness will go quite nicely back together how it was. Like so. The trim will just clip back in, so you've got trim clips around, it'll go back in and it'll positively click back in, but we're just going to leave it down like I mentioned. We're going to go out the front, get everything back together, and we'll come back, check everything works. Okay, so we're going to terminate the battery link solenoid. So we've got the two nuts that will go onto these studs. I'm just going to sit them down here. The most important thing is where this fuse holder positive lead comes from. Now it doesn't matter which one it goes on either way of the stud, but it has to get power from the auxiliary battery this side, which is a short lead, because this is going to go on top of here like so, and that is going to go onto your auxiliary battery. When your main battery is flat and you're wanting to start the vehicle, you're pushing the button, you're going to push the button on the dash, and it needs 12 volts of power. Your main battery is flat, so this is where this fuse holder needs to get power from the auxiliary battery because it's still got battery voltage. Then we're going to get this longer lead, the 90-degree lug, which both ends that we're dealing with now at the moment. We're using the 90 degrees, so actually I'll just put it so it's a bit neater. And you'll see the most important thing is this lead is with the short battery lead, which is going to get power from your auxiliary battery. Then what we're going to do here is we're going to run the cable off. Just put these zip ties just loosely when they need to go. We're just going to feed them through. So we can work with them. Let's use the stiffest battery cable. It is starter cable. I've left them loose so that we can route these cables nicely, so the end result, this is going to come up and it's going to go onto the positive over here. So we're going to put it under this M12. So we've got ourselves a 13mm socket, long extension and ratchet. We're just going to jump on top of these studs here. I'll try and get it so you can see. Just going to gently spin everything down, and the other one, in case you have connected anything on the battery, make sure that you isolate everything before you do this. These cables do carry a lot of current. If you do short them out, you're going to get a nasty surprise. So once we've done the main power studs up, we're going to check the switching or the trigger wires. So we're doing the earth circuit now. I'm not overly tightening them, so just be careful. There are any little studs, just be careful, you know, you just got to do it. The other thing to check, if you can't turn the terminal at the bottom when you're pulling on it, it's tight enough. So we'll do a last termination check anyway, because you can actually access all this when everything's together. Just got to be careful if anything's live. Okay, so that's all terminated in there. We're ready to put our battery tray in now and start connecting some cables up. So time to put the battery tray in. We've got our preformed tray. I'm just going to locate it, these two locating lugs here. Got our new battery. In our kits, just make sure it's sitting down nicely. We use a Delcore HDC27. Fully sealed battery. We prefer a fully sealed battery for maintenance purposes, and you're not going to have any nasty spills off-road and vibrations. The other one I want to mention, we've got posts and studs. So it gives you best of both worlds, and it gives you more locations to terminate things. And obviously as well, a battery terminal is just another point of corrosion and maintenance point on top of a battery, in my opinion. So now we're going to put the stainless steel J hook and the M8 nuts, and we'll tighten the battery in place. There's always one. I dropped it, but rest assured, it's not the 10mm. So, batteries in the car. What we're going to do now is we'll connect all the positives and we'll put the earth on last. Our earth is obviously negative side of the battery, positive side. Actually, sorry, that's one thing I didn't mention. Batteries from drivers to passenger sides in the 200 series, they are different. Positives on the inside on this side, positives on the inside on this side. Bit of a downside, because if you do have a battery failure, you can't actually swap them the way the factory Toyota leads are made, whereas the 70 series is really great, you can. But so just bear in mind when you're buying the battery, which orientation the terminals are at. So our ones are like a factory wiring harness. The positive, when you're looking at the battery close to you, when the terminals are furthest away from you, positives on the right. So what I'm saying there, if you're holding the battery, terminals away from you, positives on the right hand side. But just check that with your battery supplier when you get it, so you don't go to do all the hard work and you've got the wrong battery. So buy the right one the first time. Okay, so at the main battery terminal over the other side of the engine bay, obviously you've got the cover off here. I've just checked the main battery terminal, this 10mm tight. I'm undoing the 12mm on the top. This was around that way. I'm just going to spin him there. But this lead here, the smaller lead, is coming from the BZEC, so this is powering the BZEC. So we're going to put this guy here, come around underneath the main battery lead. So this is the large one now running across the top of the radiator, and it's going over to our SBI solenoid. And then I'm going to clip this back on, and we can sort of start getting all the cables to be nice and relaxed and in positions where they're going to look and, well, not look good, but be relaxed and not stressed. Just going to check that this cover's still going to locate back onto its factory position. Obviously you'll see as well there's an opening in the front of this factory cover here, so we're not having to do any Dremel or trimming, taking any of the cover away. Some vehicles you may need to do that depending on the setup. So go ahead now and we'll tighten this up. You may need to do some minor adjustments. Like I say as well, on these you do want to make sure battery termination is quite positively tight because you don't want a lease terminal. You're going to end up with a lot of problems there. So you see that there's all factory come on, factory position. So now I'm starting to look at these cables and how they route along the top and where they want to sit nicely. And we're just going to move things and juggle them around until we get the length where we are happy. This end result is going to go down there. That's going to come along there. See, this is where, if the vehicle is fitted with a factory battery or two batteries from factory, the earlier 200 series, this is where they'd run them. So don't be worried about, hang on, is it allowed to be on the fan shroud? Once you put this cover back on, that actually all gets covered anyway. One more spot, just over here, you'll see these cables as well. If you need to have a look in there and need to put an extra zip tie or so, or you're worried about something moving, do so. Tie the cables appropriately so you're not going to have any issues with rubbing on metal, fans, moving parts. And then once we've done that, we will now move over to the positive on the other battery, because we've done on this side. And then last of all, we're going to connect our earths. Okay, so we've had a little bit of a juggle around. We've gone over, under, and just trying to find which way the cables sit nicest for the application. So we're just going to nip up the positives now. Then just check all our lengths. Everything's nice along there. We can come back along, like I was mentioning before, check all your cables. We can trim all those off with the flush cuts. So obviously as well, little thing that I'm pretty fussy about is cutting zip ties with flush cutters, so you don't end up with I don't know, say like that, you put that in there, put your hand down there, you usually get cut pretty bad. So if you get a nice little set of flush cuts, you'll see here, nice and smooth. So it might not be you working on it, could be a mate, could be whoever's doing your repairs. There, I'm gonna be happy with you when you cut your hand open on it. Alright, probably could do with an extra one here. Done that, we just got to put the earth on that side, connect the earth over this side. Obviously got 3 more zip ties in there to cut off, double check them as well. Then we can come along and validate our charging system with the meter. And then go back inside, like I said as well, and finalise the inside trims once we know everything's working. So we'll jump over now and we'll put the earth on. So 10mm ratchet, can use a spanner. We're actually, obviously, earth on the battery. We're going to run the lead so it comes along here and into the earth point here. Now, I said to Aaron, it's a bit of a special bolt. He's like, hang on, what's special about it? But there's nothing really special about it, it's just got an E on it. And the reason is Toyota put an E on their bolts for anything that's on earth. And I don't know, just a bit of trivia for a Thursday morning. Okay, so I've just started the thread in there as well. I'll do this up with a quarter drive ratchet. And then last of all, we will come around onto the battery earth. Set that guy on there. $13mm on a deep socket. And auxiliary battery has all been terminated now. Always, check everything's tight as well. So now we're going to go back over, connect the earth on the passenger side, the main battery, which was the first thing we disconnected, and it's the last thing we reconnect. Okay, so we've had the car running, we've checked the alternator's charge voltage on the main battery, so obviously the earth on the meter here, the positive here, voltage setting in the multimeter, had about 13.7 volts there. So then we've come over to the auxiliary battery as well. Obviously you can see the residual voltage of this battery is brand new, it's quite high. The alternator is, the BCDC, sorry, is kicked in and charging on that. And now we're going to put all the trims and covers back together and do last terminations, checks and all that sort of stuff. Put the covers on, this dress trim on, and away we go, job done.